What's up, my friends? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into the fascinating history and evolution of a brand that's so much more than just oats and oatmeal. I'm talking about the iconic Quaker Oats company. This is the Finance Virtuoso channel, where we talk about all things finance. For your daily dose of valuable information on money, business, investments, and savings, be sure to hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell right now. Now when you hear Quaker Oats, I'm guessing most of you immediately think oatmeal, right? Those classic red cylindrical containers have been a breakfast staple for decades. But what you may not realize is that at its peak in the 1990s, Quaker Oats was an absolute corporate juggernaut, a member of the prestigious Fortune 500 with over $5 billion in annual sales. That's about the same annual revenue as a major tech company like Spotify or Uber today. However, the majority of those monster revenues weren't even coming from oatmeal. That's right, folks, Quaker Oats spent over a century steadily building itself into a multi-industry titan through an aggressive acquisition strategy. By 2000, they had grown so valuable that they were scooped up by PepsiCo in a massive $13 billion stock deal. $13 billion for the Quaker Oats guy. You know there has to be an insane story behind numbers like that. So in this video, we're going to explore the unexpected origins and evolution of Quaker Oats that allowed them to amass such a mind-blowing valuation. We'll spotlight 7 major product categories they dominated over the decades, several of which I guarantee will blow your mind. It's a wild corporate tale full of some incredible wins, hard lessons learned, and products you never could have imagined under the Quaker Oats umbrella. But before we get to those, let's quickly revisit how Quaker actually got their start in the late 1800s hot oat milling industry. Believe it or not, oats were seen as strictly for horses back then until companies like Quaker made them a human breakfast sensation. They revolutionized the industry, registered the first breakfast cereal trademark ever with Quaker Oats in 1877, and the rest is history. That iconic Quaker man mascot who looks like he just wandered in from 17th century Pennsylvania? Well, despite the name and look, the company actually has zero real ties to the Quaker religious group. They simply felt the imagery conveyed the honest, pure and wholesome vibes they wanted for their brand. A stroke of marketing genius if you ask me. Okay, now let's jump into product category number 1 that extended way beyond their core oatmeal offerings, consumer foods. Over the decades, Quaker Oats gobbled up some of the most popular and recognizable supermarket brands around. Although some acquisitions were more controversial than others. Remember Aunt Jemima pancake mix from the 1920s and the famous syrup line in the 60s? That was a Quaker brand until being discontinued and rebranded due to racism concerns in 2020. As for cereals, they introduced massive hits like Captain Crunch in the 60s and the unforgettable Mikey Likes It Life cereal campaign in the 70s. Other big names falling under their umbrella included Chewy granola bars and Rice-A-Roni. Next up, category number 2 that might surprise you, chemicals. Starting in the 1920s, Quaker actually had a separate chemicals division producing a substance called furfural derived from oat hulls and husks. It was a decent moneymaker for over 60 years until being sold off in the 80s when alternatives emerged. But that's just the start of them branching out into totally unexpected territories. How about category number 3, pet food? Yup, like many food companies, Quaker was heavily involved here for decades. Some of the billion-dollar pet brands they owned and sold over the years included Kennel Ration dog food, Puss in Boots cat food, and more. By 1997 they were bringing in over $1 billion annually just from pet chow. We're just getting warmed up though. Who could have predicted category number 4 under Quaker Oats would be retail chains? Through a bunch of acquisitions in the early 80s, they owned apparel retailer Joss Bank, Brookstone specialty tool stores, and the optical chain iLab before selling them off. They divested from these businesses to reduce their debt and concentrate more effectively on their primary food operations. But that's not even the most random one yet. Get ready for category number 5, restaurants. In the 70s and 80s, Quaker Oats owned and grew a creperie chain called Magic Pan to over 100 locations across the country before selling it. A Quaker Oats creperie, can you imagine? Okay, these next two will be a bit more familiar. Category number 6 is toys. Their most notable purchase here was iconic brand Fisher-Price in 1969 for $30 million. Over 20 years of growth and marketing genius from Quaker, Fisher-Price sales exploded to $800 million before being spun off to Mattel. And finally, the big one that was their crown jewel for many years, category number 7, beverages. Through some huge acquisitions and deals in the 80s and 90s, Quaker Oats wound up owning two of the biggest names in the beverage game, Gatorade and Snapple. Let's break it down. Gatorade was an absolute home run that they knocked out of the park. When they acquired it in 1983, Gatorade was doing $100 million per year in sales. But through incredible marketing, global expansion, and smart repositioning as a mainstream sports drink, by 2000 Quaker had grown it into a $2 billion juggernaut. Icons like the "Be Like Mike" commercials with Michael Jordan cemented Gatorade as a cultural phenomenon. Snapple, on the other hand, was arguably their biggest disaster ever. In 1994, Quaker massively overpaid $1.7 billion to acquire the trendy iced tea brand when it had around 40% market share. But under their watch, through a bunch of bungled decisions, Snapple's sales and market position just completely imploded within 3 years. They sold it at a staggering $1.4 billion loss, an all-time blunder for sure. So there you have it. When beverage behemoth PepsiCo bought Quaker Oats and all its brands for $13 billion at the turn of the century, it was mainly to get their hands on that insanely successful Gatorade business that printed money. Along with it, they got all kinds of other hidden gems and skeletons in Quaker's closet. From pioneering breakfast foods, all the way to crepes, chemicals, clothing stores, and more, Quaker Oats took over so many random products and services over their 100-plus-year history. Some brilliant home runs, some bona fide whiffs, but always keeping things interesting and proving they were so much more than just oats. So what do you think? Was the Quaker story everything you expected it to be or more? Were there any product categories I covered that completely blew your mind? Any other fun surprises or memories from the brands mentioned here? Let me know your thoughts and reactions down in the comments. That's all I've got for you on this fascinating corporate journey today. As always, thanks for watching, and if you love this content, show some love by subscribing and ringing that notification bell. I've got so much more unique business history content coming your way very soon. Until next time.